Welcome back. I'm Mindy Turner with the Curry County Cooperative Extension Service, your Family and Consumer Science Agent. This is the fourth and final installment of our stress management series. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about some coping and stress management ideas specifically related to family caregivers. We've talked about specifically what stress is, where that comes from, some basic techniques for how to manage it. We looked at on the farm and ranch, what are some of the specific stressors and how we might control what happens around those to better manage our stress. And so today we're going to look at what that looks like for a caregiver. And again, I'm borrowing some information from North Dakota State University. The cooperative extension there has done some great research and put together some great resources around this. And so, we know that providing care, whether it's to an aging family member or another member who has some type of a special need, results in a lot of stress and a lot of burnout. And there's some positive things that go along with that. There's some rewards in being able to provide as a caregiver, but there's a lot of challenges as well. So I caution you to remember what those positive benefits are to being able to care for someone else. But we also need to consider that there's a significant amount of stress that goes along with that. So first, let's look at the physical demands and direct care. So caregiving often involves that basic practical aspect of care, such as helping someone bathe or dress, moving them from the bed, maybe to a wheelchair. When caregivers perform these tasks for a dependent adult, the resulting demands and labor can be challenging and stressful to the caregiver. Stress sources of physical demands and suggested coping tips are what we're going to look at now. So, one of the things that can be very helpful if you are the one who has taken on caregiving for a specific situation is learning how to care for them properly. Training. So you know how to perform the needed tasks, what those skills take, things that are going to make your work easier and safer. Okay, we've all seen caregivers get hurt because they're trying to take things on that maybe they're not as physically capable of doing. So having that training and learning how to deal with whatever that specific situation is can be very important. Um, Practicing healthful habits, and that's eating your balanced diet. See, we've talked about that every time. Getting some regular exercise and sufficient sleep. And this means also visiting the doctor. Now, I just want to key in, we're talking here about the caregiver. The caregiver needs to eat right, needs to get some sleep, needs to have some exercise and talk with their doctor. They're doing all of those things for the person they're caring for. They need to do it for themselves. It's that lifeboat mentality of you have to save yourself before you can save anyone else. And so who puts their oxygen mask on first on the plane? You've got to make sure that you're healthy and capable before you can provide the appropriate care. If you have physical tasks in caring for that person that you cannot do, then you might need to bring in, whether it's another healthcare provider, maybe it's the nurse that comes once a week, maybe it's a neighbor who's particularly helpful and wants to assist with those things. But finding those sources of help to manage the things that you can't is going to be a serious piece of managing the stress that goes along with being a caregiver. And then, of course, work to keep your care recipient as independent as possible for you and for them. It's going to reduce that stress on you, but it's going to help them maintain their dignity. And it can be hard when we're the sole caregiver and we really want to help and take care of this person for it to just overwhelm us and become that we're doing absolutely everything before we realize it. So making a conscious effort to allow them some independence so that we can relieve some of our stress within that and they can maintain that dignity and relieve some of their own stress. And then, of course, we want to utilize some adaptive and assistive equipment. If we have the patients with special needs, I know one of the things that was a huge help with my grandparents was a lifting recliner that would raise up so they could get out of it, even when they couldn't get all the way out of it on their own and someone had to assist them, but it got them that far so that physically there was not as big a demand on that caregiver and their body and their strength. So being aware of what those physical demands are and what you need for direct care of the person you're taking care of can help you make a plan, identify what the stressors are, and be better equipped to manage that stress. Caregiving often takes a financial toll on the caregiver and their families. And those financial demands that caregivers experience may include just the cost of the medical care, payment for that hired help. At times, caregiving can require a person to become directly involved in the management of the other person's financial affairs, their banking, their savings, or some other issues that may have to be dealt with. So, stress sources of financial demands can be a lot. Maybe someone has to retire early or change their job schedule in order to be there to take care of the person they're caring for. So, some of the ways that we can reduce the stress and manage the stress around being a caregiver and what those financial demands look like is evaluate and utilize some of the programs that assist with medical and treatment costs related to family caregiving. Now, there's a stressor in and of itself, right? Identifying what those programs are, the application process, what some of that has to look like to make those things happen. But those programs can go a long way into assisting and alleviating some of the financial burden. So learn about and use programs that provide that assistive technology at reduced fees or on loan. Sometimes that extra equipment, that extra thing you need can be taken out as a loan, or you can get, it doesn't cost as much to have it, whether that's through a lease or a rental or an outright purchase, whatever that happens to look like. But we have to ask questions to find out what those things are. And then we need to discuss the financial needs and impacts with other family members. Sometimes there's several siblings involved in the caregiving piece, and everyone needs to understand what the financial needs are and what those issues look like as they arise. So being able to talk, and in some families, you don't talk about money. So it can be a real struggle to have those kinds of conversations. But that communication can, again, be very helpful in having to manage your stress as a caregiver. And then plan ahead for projected medical costs or treatment needs by using a health savings account or long-term care insurance. So I know some of us right now are looking at whether it's aging parents or other family members with some type of, whether it's a disability or some type of a chronic illness or ailment that's coming about. So thinking about how can we plan ahead for what those costs are going to look like, just like we plan for college or paying for other things. What can we do now to prepare ourselves for later? That gives you not only an area of focus, but an idea in some ways that we're going to be able to better manage those stressors. Caring for people is hard, and it will take an emotional toll on us. It can be very tiresome, can be very challenging, especially if it goes on for an extended period of time. And so those emotional demands are kind of the hidden cost of being a caregiver, and they may be the most severe stress impact. And we talked about keeping all that stress in because it has nowhere to go, and tensing and having all of those ups and downs with your muscles and your blood pressure and all of those things. So these emotional burdens where we feel like we can't express those and we have no way to kind of put those out there can be a significant issue as a caregiver in managing our stress. So some of the things that we can think about is, first of all, finding someone that we trust, that we can talk to about how we're feeling. We feel guilty when we're frustrated because we're having to care for someone, because we feel like, well, that's our job and that's what we need to do. And we love them. So we want to take care of them, but we still get frustrated. It's still a lot. We still get tired. And there's just that emotional piece of having to do that. And so that comes right along with being realistic about what those demands of caregiving are and asking others to help. We can't do it 24/7 all alone. Set some time aside for that self-care and having that personal renewal, whether it's those self-regulation techniques we talked about in the first or the second part of the series, or looking at getting outside and just taking a walk, doing those stretches, those types of things, but having that time for you. Take advantage of respite care services. get a break for a few hours or a couple of days, just so that you can, again, we feel guilty because we're stepping away from things, but we have to learn to take care of ourselves. So there are caregiver support groups around where you can share your feelings with other people who understand, who have been there and know what's going on. So you can look into what those resources are to help reduce stress, some of the things that are available locally in your area. And then get assistance from others in handling specific tasks that are challenging. So I know sometimes, especially if you're the child, having to bathe a parent can be extremely overwhelming. So maybe that's the thing that you save to be the job for the nurse or the home health assistant or whoever it is that's coming in, because emotionally, that's just very difficult. So these are some things that you can consider to help alleviate, not completely alleviate it. There's going to be emotional burdens because we're emotionally attached as a caregiver in the family, but figuring out what is the best way to manage the stress that comes along with these things. So along with all these things, it builds up to be relationship challenges. Now we know dealing with people, one of the hugest stressors we deal with in all aspects of our life. But when we talk about being the caregiver and how those relationships are affected between you as the caregiver and whoever you are caring for, again, there might be siblings, there might be a spouse or someone else involved, that those relationships are going to shift based on the amount of care that's needed, the type of care you're providing. So it's going to be important when we talk about managing our stress to make some deliberate choices to help us do things in a positive way. So first of all, let's focus on some positive experiences with the care recipient. So sharing memories, taking time to talk about their life story, writing down things they've shared or told you, going back through photo albums and looking at things, but making sure that you're keeping some type of a positive connection, because conflict can develop when you're having to care for them and you have to tell them what they have to do and they don't want to do it. And in a lot of cases, this is an adult that has always been independent across their life. And so when that relationship shifts, it's very hard for everyone. Involve the care recipient as much as possible in discussions for the guidelines of their care. Let them feel they have some control about what's going on, because that's going to help maintain that relationship between the two of you. Express your needs and issues related to caregiving responsibilities clearly to other family members. Look, you got to help me. This is where I need help. Can you come stay a couple days? What are the things that you really need assistance with? And then take time for your other family relationships. Again, we get so caught up in what we're doing and so committed to being a caregiver. Sometimes we lose sight of those others who care about us and who, again, are positive for us in dealing with our stress. So taking time for those family relationships. We said there are support groups out there. There's networks for caregivers where you can talk to others and you can get support and advice and suggestions on how to more effectively be a caregiver and manage your stress, which is the key piece of what we're talking about today. Have each family participate in caregiving and express appreciation for each other. Y'all, don't forget to say, thank you. I am so appreciative that you were able to be here and be a part of this. And then discuss your concerns or the differences in what we see for the care needs with your medical or other caregiving supports, with the home health aide or the nurse that come in and say, I noticed you do this a certain way. Is there a reason for that? Finding the best way to provide care and care for ourselves is how we're going to effectively manage our stress as a caregiver. Of course, easier said than done. There are a lot of great techniques for managing our stress, but when things are overwhelming and we're in it, it's hard to see and remember that. So the purpose of this series was to be kind of that fun, fresh reminder of, hey, I can take care of myself. I can learn to manage my stress and I can practice the skills I need to be effective in that. I'm Mindy Turner with the Curry County Cooperative Extension Service, your family and consumer science agent. Thank you for being a part of our stress management series.